I'm intrigued that in your opening session today you have my good friend Bill McKibben and myself. That either means two things. It either means that you like criminals, because both Bill and I have spent 5 days in prison this year fighting climate change, myself in Greenland and Bill actually in worse conditions in Washington, D.C. It's either that you like criminals or you are wanting to say to our politicians that activism for climate justice is not a crime. In Copenhagen, I had the honor to address COY as well. And I want to remind you that when we went to Copenhagen, we said the world needed a fab deal. By fab, we didn't mean fabulous. We simply meant a fair, ambitious, and legally binding climate treaty. What we got in Copenhagen was not a fab deal, but we got a flab outcome. F-L-A-B, full of loopholes and bull. And here now, 2 years later, we are still not where we needed to be. And the messages to our governments right now have to be the following. First, we have to ask our governments, how long will it continue that you don't listen to the voices of the people, but you listen to the voices of the polluting corporations that control far too many of our governments all across the world? Secondly, we want to ask our governments on finance. How is it possible that you were able to overnight find not millions of dollars, not billions of dollars, but trillions of dollars to bail out the banks, the bankers, and the bonuses? Why can't you find a fraction of that money to bail out the climate, bail out the poor, and bail out our children? The third thing we need to ask our governments is, when will you wake up and smell the coffee? Yes. 1 week ago, the International Energy Agency, by the way, a completely mainstream organization, not a left-wing, not a liberal, but a mainstream organization, in their annual energy outlook, basically suggested that time is fast running out, and if you read it carefully, it almost suggests that time has actually run out. They are saying that we have to get, as the scientists are saying, emissions to peak by 2015 and start coming down after that. But in fact, as we all know, our governments are far from agreeing that, and we need to push them here in Durban. Also, the International Panel on Climate Science, the eminent body of scientists that won the Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore a few years ago, have studied the violent weather events that we have seen in the last 12 to 18 months, and have concluded that the bulk of those weather events can be directly related to climate change, and also that they're going to intensify in the years that are coming. In Europe, for example, how many of you are from Europe? Okay, you should speak to the folks in Europe, because in July and August in many parts of Europe, when it was supposed to be sunny, it was raining. And September, October, everybody in Europe, I was there for a bit, were getting orgasmic about how great the weather was, because it was sunny and hottest months in October. And while we get happy about the good weather in the bad weather time of Europe, if you know what I mean, we have to recognize that climate change is happening now. It's taking lives now. We know that about 350,000 lives are being lost every year directly from climate impacts. So another message to our government is, how long will you be indifferent in the name of people dying from your inaction and from you giving too much of power to the corporations that control the climate negotiations and many of our national governments? Our fourth message, and particularly all of us who are from South Africa and from Durban, would like to say this very, very loud to the negotiators. Durban cannot be a burial ground for the Kyoto Protocol. Our governments try to bury it, then we should say to them very clearly, we will do everything to bury as many of y'all when national elections come in your countries. Yes. Our next message to our governments is, how can you lose the opportunity that the crisis of climate change offers to us? What are the opportunities? One, we have lived in a world of far too many divisions. between West and East, North and South, developing and developed, poor and rich. The opportunity that climate change offers us is this is a time for us to put away all those divisions for one simple reason. We either get this right as rich and poor countries acting together as a common, united human family, and we secure the future of all our children in the world, or if we get it wrong, we will go down together irrespective of whether we are rich or poor countries. The next message, the other opportunity is, especially at a time when so many people are unemployed, when so many economies are struggling, why would our governments not invest in a new green economy when all the studies are showing that investing in a green economy is not only good for the climate and the environment, but is also good for the economy because it has the potential to generate much, much more clean, decent, green jobs in a new green economy. Why would you not do it, and why will you continue to be in the pockets and be enslaved by the fossil fuel industry? Now is the time we have to say to our governments, change, change, change has to come now. The next message is to those political leaders like George Bush who used and manipulated religion to get elected and to actually use and abuse religion to maintain power. Our message should be very simple. Do people really think God is so cruel? That God knew, obviously, that human beings will need energy. So do you think then God scratched his or her head and said, are these people going to need energy? Okay, I know what I'll do. I'll take the coal, I'll put it deep in the ground. I'll take the oil, I'll put it deep in the ocean, deep in the ground. I'll take the gas, I'll do the same. So people have to kill themselves trying to get to it, and in the process, destroy a whole range of beautiful things I created. Clearly, humanity has been looking in the wrong direction. Rather than looking down at coal, oil, and gas, we should have been looking up to what God gave us in terms of wind and solar that can meet all our energy needs, create jobs, and secure our future. So I've been waiting a long time in my life to start a sentence like this because this is another threat that our governments are not waking up to. I strongly support the CIA and the Pentagon when they said in 2003 that the biggest threat to our future peace and security will not come from oil, will come from climate change and the impacts of climate change. And when you look at Darfur and the genocide in Darfur, my dear brothers and sisters, that is the first resource war that has been brought about by climate change that we are witnessing, and we are not making the connections, and certainly our politicians are not. Now I want to begin to round up and say I realize that many of the things I said so far are quite depressing. And people sometimes say, you know, Martin Luther King, when he gave that famous speech, people say it was called I Have a Dream. It was not called I Have a Nightmare. Right? Because we need to now move forward into this COP with a message of optimism, with a message of we can do it, the message that I heard in the comments that you made, that the power is in your hands. And my first message to you as young people is, do not trust the adult leadership of the moment. We are the biggest bunch of losers you're going to find anywhere in the world. Seriously, we are in denial. And when I say we, I don't mean all of us, of course, but our political and business leaders are sleepwalking us into a crisis of epic proportions. When you speak to them, ministers, heads of state, and so on, which in my work I have to do, they agree with everything that we say. Yes, we're very concerned. Yes, we're acting. Yes, we're working on this policy. Yes, we got 25 white papers that we've actually done. We do not need talk anymore, dear brothers and sisters in government and business. We need you all to get off your butts, and we need you all to start making the changes so that we can secure our children and grandchildren's future. So, in conclusion, I want to say to you, do not accept when any of us say to you that young people are the leaders of tomorrow. You have to say, young people are the leaders of today. We are ready to lead now, and if adults are not prepared to provide the leadership, you should challenge us to get out of the way, and you have to step up forward and bring a new vision, a new lens, and a new But the one message that I'd like to conclude with, as somebody who is deeply grateful to the people of this city, which I am a product of, and that is to say to you that activism can be sexy, activism can be fun, activism can give you an identity and friendships and so on. In the audience here, by the way, are two young people whose, I won't mention the names because I'll embarrass them, but both of them are the kids of two of my best friends who we were involved in the struggle fighting the apartheid system since the age of 15. And those relationships that you build up, working for the future, working to create a better world, those friendships are the friendships that will endure for your lifetime. So the connections that you've made here today and over the last 3 days of COY, I urge you to cherish them, nurture them, because those are the friendships that will actually help you when back home, when you hit bad moments, when your government is not moving as fast as you actually need. So I want to end with two things. One is, I want to actually remind you about what history teaches us. Whether you look at slavery, whether you look at colonialism, whether you look at, in the US, the civil rights movement, whether you look at the women's right to vote, whether you look at apartheid, all of these struggles only moved forward when decent men and women said, enough is enough and no more. We are prepared to put our lives on the line if necessary. We are prepared to go to prison if necessary. And I have to say that right now, the moment of history that we're in, we do not have any moral choice but to show the kind of courage that our brothers and sisters in the Arab Spring are showing, that our brothers and sisters in the Occupy movement are showing, in the courage that we are seeing in the Chilean education movement. If some of you are following what's happening in Chile, young people are at the center of all of those struggles. And that's a leadership that we need. But I want to be honest with you. Our politicians and our business leaders all sadly suffer from a common medical condition. They all seem to have a problem with hearing. And if we are to make them listen, we cannot get them to listen and act as fast as we need to solely by sending a letter, sitting them down and talking to them. All, as we saw, all those struggles I mentioned only move forward when we were able to show the moral courage that said, we will not accept this injustice. And I appeal to you that you are tasked with a big challenge, to stand up with courage, to resist with courage, to mobilize more people to participate. And I would like to send a very warm welcome and encourage all of you. On behalf of my colleagues at Greenpeace, we would like to invite you to join us at the tent on the beachfront where we have a range of activities. It's called the solar tent, and it's got also a small little windmill spinning there. You can't miss it. There's various activities. I'd like to invite you there, but I also would like to invite you to actually, if you so choose, to become actively involved in Greenpeace. You can join as a cyber activist. Greenpeace will not be able, neither would all our other partners in other organizations that we work with, like 350.org, we will not be able to win without the active participation of each and every one of you. So I would really encourage you to actually get as actively involved as you feel comfortable. And here in Africa, we have a growing Greenpeace Africa, so those of you who are from Africa, I encourage you to talk to the folks from Greenpeace Africa about how you can actually get involved. Now, I know you folks are very familiar with all the social media stuff, but having been a twit most of my life, I've just been introduced to Twitter. So I've been told by my colleagues to say to you that they are going to be helping me to Twitter what's happening inside the negotiations and what's happening outside of the next 2 weeks, and I invite you to actually follow that. In conclusion, I want to just leave you with a story from Durban of two young boys who were fleeing into exile. A guy called Kumi Naidoo was my best friend and myself at the same time in December '87. Not very far from here, in a dark, unlit street, we said our goodbyes as we fled into exile after being on the run for several months from the apartheid police. And my friend Lenny, who was very philosophical, asked me the question, Kumi, what is the biggest contribution we can make to the cause of humanity? I said, giving our life. Because at that time in South Africa, it's what it is like in Syria at the moment. Every weekend we have funerals burying our friends and colleagues who have been murdered by the police. And he said, you mean when you say giving your life, going out, participating in demonstration, getting shot and killed? And I said, I guess so. He said, that's the wrong answer. He said, it's not giving your life, but giving the rest of your life. I was 22 years old at the time. My friend Lenny was way ahead of time. In fact, he was the first environmentalist I knew. And at that time, I believe he was one of only 100 vegetarians on the entire African continent. And he always used to say this philosophical thing, so I just smiled, hugged him. We went in our different directions, fled out of the country. A few weeks later, a few months later, I get the message that my friend Lenny and 3 young women from my communities here of Lamontville and Amlazi were brutally murdered by the apartheid regime. There were so many bullets in their bodies, their parents could not recognize them at the mortuary. I had to think deep and hard about what he was trying to say when he said, it's not giving your life, but giving the rest of your life. And what he was saying is, the struggle for justice, environmental justice, climate justice, social justice, gender justice, these struggles are marathons and they are not sprints. And the biggest contribution that any one of us can make is to have perseverance, to have courage, to have stamina, and not to be ever tempted to believe that our contribution and your individual contribution does not make a difference. So the biggest contribution that any one of us can make is to maintain a lifetime of involvement and commitment until these struggles are won. So my appeal to you, dear brothers and sisters, when you hit your moments of frustration, when you hit your moments of doubt, just remember that this world will be a much more pessimistic place were it not for each and every one of you's contribution to working to secure a better planet, a safer planet, a more just planet, and a more equitable planet so that our children and grandchildren can live in peace and prosperity. Before I take my seat and disappear to the climate train, which is arriving it's been all over the country collecting testimonies, and it's arriving at the Durban station. I just want to play a little game with you. How many of you know where your ancestors come from? Okay? Let's see, who wants to shout it out? Your ancestors, now go back as far as you can, okay? In Kandla, okay, that's very specific. In Germany somewhere, okay.
Africa.
Okay, somebody says Africa.
Africa.
And now, oh, there's a white guy who says Africa. Okay, and why does a white guy, do you know why a white guy says Africa? Even if he's not South African? It's because it's now proven that humanity started in Africa, from the Rift Valley in Kenya all the way to Ethiopia. So the story goes, that's where we started off. Somehow we ended up in Australia, then we worked our way back to Europe, and sadly along the way some of you lost your color. I apologize for that. So in a sense we are all Africans, and I want to say to you in concluding, I'm going to ask you to join me in a little song, but I want to say to you, since we are all Africans, I'm not going to sort of say welcome to Durban. I want to say to you, welcome home.